house had been empty for 23 years. That's what the neighbors told me when I pulled up in my truck. I was a contractor. I'd been hired to renovate the place. New roof, new wiring, new everything. The owner lived 3 states away. He'd inherited the property from an uncle he'd never met. He wanted to sell it. He wanted it to look like someone had lived there recently. I should have asked more questions. I should have asked why nobody had touched the place for 2 decades. I should have asked about the fire, but I was young. I needed the money, and I didn't believe in ghosts. The house sat at the end of a gravel road that wound through dense woods. The trees were so thick that even at noon, the sunlight barely reached the ground. The house itself was a 2-story Victorian, painted white once, now gray and peeling. The windows were boarded. The porch sagged. The roof had holes you could see through. It looked like something from a horror movie. I told myself that was a good thing. It meant I'd have plenty of work. The first day, I just walked to the property. I needed to assess the damage. The foundation was solid. The frame was sound. The roof would have to be completely replaced. The wiring was ancient, cloth-covered, dangerous. The plumbing was shot. It was a full gut job. I made notes. I took pictures. I planned my approach. That was when I noticed the basement door. It was on the side of the house, half hidden by overgrown bushes. The door was metal, rusted, with a heavy padlock that looked newer than the rest of the house. I knelt down and examined the lock. It was a master lock, the kind you buy at any hardware store. It had been installed recently within the last few years. I tried to open it. It wouldn't budge. That night, I stayed in the house. I'd brought a sleeping bag and a cooler of food. I didn't want to drive 40 minutes back to town just to sleep. I chose a room on the 2nd floor, the one with the least amount of water damage. I swept the floor. I laid out my bag. I ate a sandwich in the dark. The house was silent. Not the kind of silence you get in a city, the kind of silence you get in the middle of nowhere, where there are no cars, no voices, no electricity hum. Just absolute stillness. I woke up at 3 a.m. I didn't know why at first. Then I heard it. A tapping sound. Coming from downstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone knocking on a door. I got up. I grabbed my flashlight. I walked to the top of the stairs. The tapping continued. It was coming from the kitchen. I walked down the stairs, my bare feet cold on the wood. The kitchen was empty. The tapping stopped. I stood there for a minute, waiting. Nothing. I went back upstairs. I tried to sleep. The tapping started again. This time it was coming from the basement door, the locked one. I went to the window and looked down. The basement door was still locked. But the padlock was moving. Someone was pulling on it from the inside. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner of the room, with my back against the wall and my flashlight in my hand. I watched the window until the sun came up. The next day I called the owner. I told him about the basement door. I told him about the padlock. I asked if there was anything down there I should know about. There was a long pause. And he said, "Don't go in there." "Why not?" "Because my uncle sealed it for a reason." He said there was something in the basement. Something that wasn't human. He said it came up through the floor. He said it talked to him at night. He tried to get rid of it. He couldn't. So he sealed it in. I didn't believe him. I told him I was going to open the door and see for myself. He told me not to. He told me I'd regret it. He told me his uncle wasn't the only one who'd heard things in that basement. The previous owners had heard things too, and the owners before them. That's why the house had been abandoned for so long. I told him I'd call him back. I spent the rest of the day working on the house. I fixed a section of the roof. I cleaned out the kitchen. I hauled debris to a dumpster I'd rented. I tried not to think about the basement, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I went to the basement door. I had bolt cutters in my truck. I used them to cut the padlock. The lock fell to the ground with a heavy thud. I pulled open the door. The stairs descended into darkness. The air that came up was cold and damp. It smelled like earth and old metal. I shone my flashlight down. The stairs were wooden, rotting in places. At the bottom, I could see a concrete floor and something else, a shape, a pile of something. I walked down the stairs slowly. The wood creaked under my weight. I reached the bottom. The shape was a pile of blankets, old stained blankets, and next to the blankets, a notebook and a photograph. I picked up the photograph. It showed a woman. young, maybe 25, dark hair, dark eyes. She was smiling. In the background of the photograph, I could see the house, the same house, but it looked newer, fresh paint, clean windows. I opened the notebook. The handwriting was small, tight, feminine. Day 1. I moved in today. The real estate agent said the house was a bargain. I know why now. I heard it last night. Tapping, coming from the floor. I went to the basement and there was nothing there. But the tapping continued. It was coming from under the concrete. I don't know what's down there. I'm scared. I turned the page. Day 7. I've been hearing footsteps at night. Not from outside, from inside the walls. I think something lives in this house. Something that was here before me. I don't know if it's a person or an animal, but I can hear it breathing. It sounds like it's right next to my ear. I turned another page. Day 14. I found a hole in the basement floor, a small hole. It wasn't there before. I looked inside. I couldn't see the bottom. I dropped a rock. I didn't hear it hit anything. I covered the hole with a board. I put a chair on top of the board. I don't want to know what's down there. I kept reading. Day 21. Something came out of the hole last night. I woke up and it was standing in my room. It was tall and thin and pale. It had no face. Just smooth skin where a face should be. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I screamed, disappeared. But I could hear it in the walls. It was laughing. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking. Day 28. I can't stay here anymore. I'm leaving tonight. I'm going to seal the basement door. I'm going to lock it and never come back. I don't care if it follows me. I just need to get out of this house. If you're reading this, don't go into the basement. Don't look for the hole. And if you hear tapping, don't investigate. Just leave. Leave and never come back. I turned another page. Day 14. I found a hole in the basement floor, a small hole. It wasn't there before. I looked inside. I couldn't see the bottom. I dropped a rock. I didn't hear it hit anything. I covered the hole with a board. I put a chair on top of the board. I don't want to know what's down there. I kept reading. Day 21. Something came out of the hole last night. I woke up and it was standing in my room. It was tall and thin and pale. It had no face. Just smooth skin where a face should be. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I screamed, disappeared. But I could hear it in the walls. It was laughing. I closed the notebook. My hands were shaking. Day 28. I can't stay here anymore. I'm leaving tonight. I'm going to seal the basement door. I'm going to lock it and never come back. I don't care if it follows me. I just need to get out of this house. If you're reading this, don't go into the basement. Don't look for the hole. And if you hear tapping, don't investigate. Just leave. Leave and never come back. I bought the farmhouse at auction. It was cheap. Dirt cheap. The real estate listing said historic property in need of renovation. The photos showed a beautiful old house with a wraparound porch and a red barn. What the photos didn't show was the condition. The roof was caving in, the porch was rotten, the barn had collapsed, and there was something in the basement. I'm a fixer. I like taking broken things and making them work again. That's why I bought the house. That's why I drove out there on a cold November morning with a truck full of tools and a plan. The house was in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town was 30 miles away. The road to the house was unpaved, full of potholes and lined with dead trees. The house itself was dark, even in the daylight. The windows were covered in grime. The front door was boarded. I broke the boards off with a crowbar. I pushed open the door. Inside, the house smelled like rot, wet wood, mold, and something else. Something animal, something dead. I walked through the rooms. The kitchen had old appliances from the 1950s. The living room had a fireplace full of ash. The bedrooms had mattresses with springs poking through. The furniture was still there. Everything was still there. It was like the owners had just gotten up and left. That was when I found the photographs. They were on the mantelpiece in frames. A family, a man, a woman, 3 children, 2 boys, and a girl. The youngest was maybe 5. The oldest was maybe 12. They were all smiling. They looked happy. I turned the frames over. On the back of each one, there was a date. August 14th, 1987. and a name. The Morrison family. I looked up the Morrisons on my phone. I found an article from 1988. The headline said, "Family of 5 disappears without a trace." I sat down on the dusty couch and read the article. The Morrisons had lived in the farmhouse for 6 years. They were well liked in the community. They didn't have any enemies, they didn't have any debts. They just vanished one night. The neighbors reported seeing lights in the house for a week after they disappeared, but no one answered the door. When the police finally entered, the house was empty. No struggle, no blood, no signs of forced entry. The family was just gone. The case went cold. The farmhouse was abandoned. It changed hands a few times, but never sold. People said it was haunted. People said the Morrisons were still there somewhere, waiting. I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in explanations. And I believed I could find one. I spent the next week renovating the house. I fixed the roof. I replaced the windows. I rewired the electrical system. I worked from sunup to sundown. I slept in a tent in the backyard. I didn't want to stay inside the house at night. Not because I was scared. Because it was too quiet. Even the crickets seemed to avoid it. On the 6th night, I heard the sound. It was faint at first, like someone whispering from a long way away. I sat up in my tent and listened. The whispering continued. It was coming from the house. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to the front door. The door was still open. I stepped inside. The whispering was louder now. I followed it to the basement door. The basement. I hadn't been down there yet. I didn't want to. I opened the door. The stairs descended into blackness. The whispering was coming from the bottom. I walked down the stairs slowly. At the bottom, I stopped. The basement was unfinished. Concrete walls, dirt floor. A single naked bulb hung from the ceiling, but it didn't work. I shone my flashlight around the room. There were scratches on the walls, thousands of them, like someone had been scratching at the concrete with their fingernails. I looked closer. Some of the scratches were letters. Help. Let us out. We are still here. I stepped back. My heart was pounding. The whispering stopped. A new sound started. Tapping, coming from the floor beneath the dirt. I knelt down. I pressed my ear to the ground. The tapping was right below me. It was coming from under the house. I left the basement. I went to my truck. I grabbed a shovel. I went back down. I started digging. The dirt was loose, easy to move. I dug down about a foot. Then my shovel hit something solid. I cleared away the dirt. It was a trapdoor, a wooden trapdoor with an iron ring. I pulled the ring. The trapdoor opened. Below it was a hole. Dark, deep, endless. And at the bottom I could see a shape, a small shape. The shape of a child. "Hello?" I called. The shape moved. It stood up. It was a little girl. She was wearing a nightgown, dirty and torn. Her hair was tangled. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. "Help me," she said. "Please help me. They put me down here. My brothers are here too. They put us all down here." "What are you talking about?" I said. "Who put you down here?" "My father," she said. "My father said we did something wrong. He said we were bad. He said we had to stay down here until we learned to be good." "Where is your father now?" She looked up. Her eyes were wet with tears. "He went away," she said. "He said he was going to get help. He never came back." I reached down. I offered her my hand. She took it. Her hand was cold. Not like ice, like the absence of warmth. I pulled her up. She stood in the dirt, shivering. I took off my jacket and put it around her shoulders. "Come on," I said, "let's get you out of here." She followed me up the stairs. She followed me out of the basement. She followed me into the living room. I sat her down on the couch. I turned on a lamp. The light was dim, but I could see her clearly now. Her face was pale. Her eyes were dark. She didn't blink. She didn't move. "I need to call someone," I said. "I need to call the police." She shook her head. "They won't find anything. They never do." "What do you mean?" She stood up. She walked to the mantelpiece. She picked up one of the photographs, the one with the whole family. She pointed to the man. "He put us down there," she said. "He said we were bad. He said we had to stay down there until we learned. But we never learned. We couldn't learn. Because there was nothing to learn." "Your father?" I said. "He did this to you?" She nodded. "He took us down there one by one. First my brothers, then me. He said we were noisy. He said we were messy. He said we didn't deserve to be in the house. Where is he now? She looked at me. Her eyes were empty. He's still here, she said. I stepped back. What do you mean? He never left. He lives in the walls. He lives in the floor. He lives in the basement. He comes out at night. He watches us. He waits for us to make a noise. Then he puts us back in the hole. You're not making sense, I said. Your father is gone. He disappeared. Everyone said so. She laughed. It was a hollow sound like air escaping a balloon. He didn't disappear, she said. He just went deeper, deeper into the house, deeper into the walls. He went down to find the thing that lived in the hole, the thing that was there before us, the thing that's been there forever. I backed toward the door. I didn't want to hear any more. Don't go, she said. He likes visitors. He hasn't had a visitor in a long time. I turned and ran. I ran out of the house. I ran to my truck. I got in. I started the engine. When I looked back, the little girl was standing in the doorway. She was waving. That was 6 years ago. I never went back to that farmhouse. I never told anyone what I found. But sometimes, late at night, I see a little girl in my rearview mirror. She's always there in the back seat. She never says anything, she just waves. And I know that the house on Blackberry Lane isn't empty, it's full. Full of the Morrisons, full of the thing that lives in the hole. And one day, it will open its door again. And it will take someone else. But I just hope it's not me. The church sat on a hill outside the small town of Pilgrim's Creek. It had been there since the 1840s. It was built by the town's founders, a group of strict, devout people who believed in hard work and punishment. They built the church at the highest point in the county. They said it was so they could see God coming. But the locals had another story. They said the church was built on top of something that needed to be contained, something that had been there long before the town existed, something that didn't belong in this world. I didn't know any of this when I bought the property. I was a real estate developer. I saw a cheap building on a hill with a lot of land. I thought I could turn it into a bed and breakfast. I didn't care about the history. I didn't care about the legends. I was young and ambitious and stupid. I thought I could make anything work. I thought I could fix any problem. I was wrong. The first time I visited the church, I drove up the winding road that led to the hill. The trees were thick on both sides, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The road was narrow, barely wide enough for my truck. I had to slow down at every turn. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. By the time I reached the top of the hill, it was almost dark. The church loomed in front of me. It was a simple building, white clapboard with a steeple that reached toward the sky. The steeple had a bell, but the rope was gone. The windows were stained glass, depicting scenes from the Bible. The front door was heavy oak, with iron hinges that had rusted over time. I parked my truck and walked toward the building. The grass was overgrown, reaching my knees. The gravel path was covered in weeds. Nobody had been here in a long time. I pushed open the front door. It groaned on its hinges. Inside, the church was dark. The air was cold and still. I could smell dust and old wood and something else. Something that reminded me of a basement. Wet earth. Mold. Decay. The main hall was large. Wooden pews lined the aisle, dusty and rotted. Some had collapsed. Others were leaning at odd angles. The altar was still standing. A simple wooden table with a white cloth. A large cross hung above it. The stained glass windows cast colored light onto the floor. I walked down the aisle, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind the altar, there was a door. I pushed it open. It led to a small room with a cot and a desk. The pastor's quarters. The cot had old sheets, yellowed with age. The desk had a ledger. I opened the ledger. It was a journal. It belonged to the last pastor. His name was Thomas. The entries were dated from 1972 to 1974. I started reading. The handwriting was small and tight, like he was afraid someone would read over his shoulder. January 12th, 1972. The congregation has grown restless. They say they hear things at night. Footsteps in the basement, whispers in the walls. I've told them it's just the old building settling. But I don't believe it. I've heard the sounds myself. Something is moving down there. I'm going to investigate. I turned the page. January 15th, 1972. I found a door in the basement. It was hidden behind a stack of old hymnals. The door was heavy, iron, It had a lock on it. I couldn't open it. I tried to pry it open with a crowbar. It wouldn't budge. I don't know what's behind that door. But I can hear it. It's breathing. I'm afraid to tell anyone. February 2nd, 1972. I told the elders about the door. They went silent. They exchanged glances. Then the oldest one, Deacon Miller, spoke. He told me to forget about the door. He said it had been sealed for a reason. He said the church was built to keep something locked away, something that had been there before the town existed, something that didn't belong in this world. I asked him what it was. He wouldn't tell me. He just said I should pray. Pray and forget. I kept reading. The entries became more erratic, more frantic. March 5th, 1972. I can't sleep. I can hear it at night. It's calling my name. It wants me to open the door. It wants me to let it out. I know I shouldn't. I know it's wrong. But I'm curious. I want to see what's behind that door. I need to know what's there. I feel like I'm going crazy. March 12th, 1972. I went to the basement again. I brought a hammer and a chisel. I tried to break the lock. It wouldn't break. The metal is too strong. I think it's not normal metal. I think it's something else. Something that doesn't exist in this world. I touched the door. It was cold. Colder than it should have been. I put my ear to it. I heard breathing. Slow and deep. It knows I'm here. It's waiting. April 14th, 1972. I opened the door. I don't know why. I just did. I was standing in the basement and I reached out and the lock just opened. It opened on its own, like it was waiting for me. The door swung open. The room beyond was small, 10 feet by 10 feet. Stone walls, a dirt floor, and in the center of the room, a stone altar. And on the altar, a book. I picked it up. The pages were blank. But as I held it, words started to appear. Words I didn't understand. Words that made no sense. They burned into my mind. I closed the book. I put it back. I left the room. I locked the door. The journal entries stopped for a few months. Then they started again, but the handwriting was different. It was smaller, more desperate. Like he was running out of time. August 3rd, 1972. The book is in my head. Even when I'm not reading it, I can see the words. They burn in my mind. They tell me to open the door again. They tell me to let out what's inside. I've been sleeping in the church. I can't go home. I can't be alone. The book is everywhere. I see its words on the walls. I see them on the floor. I see them in my dreams. August 15th, 1972. I tried to burn the book. I took it to the field behind the church. I poured kerosene on it. I lit a match. The book didn't burn. It just sat there, untouched. The flames licked at it, but they didn't catch. It was like the book was protected, like something was keeping it safe. I buried it in the field. I covered it with dirt, but the next morning it was back on the altar, waiting for me. September 2nd, 1972. The congregation is leaving. They say they've seen things. Shadows moving in the chapel. Lights that don't make sense. Voices that come from the walls. I tell them it's nothing. I tell them it's just the old building settling, but I know it's not nothing. The door has been opened. The thing behind it is waking up. I can feel it in my bones. My October 2nd, 1972. I can hear it talking to me, not in words, in feelings. It wants me to go back. It wants me to open the door again. It wants me to read the book. I'm fighting it. I'm praying, but I'm losing. I'm losing myself. November 1st, 1972. I went to the door again. I opened it. The room was darker than before. The altar was covered in dust, but the book was clean. It was waiting for me. I opened it. The words were still there. They were brighter now. They moved on the page. They crawled toward my hands. I closed the book. I ran. I didn't look back. The final entry was dated December 24th, 1974. I can't take it anymore. The book has shown me everything. What's behind the door? What's under the hill? What's been waiting for all these years? I have to seal it again. I have to put it back to sleep. But I can't do it alone. I need help. I'm going to get the elders. I'm going to tell them everything. I'll make them understand. If you're reading this, pray for me. I'm going to need it. The journal ended there. There were no more entries after that. I closed the ledger and put it back on the desk. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to stay in that church. I didn't want to be anywhere near it. But I had to see the basement. I had to see the door. I had to know if it was real. I walked to the back of the church. There was a door near the altar. I opened it. Stairs. Narrow stairs descending into darkness. The air was cold and damp. turned on my flashlight and walked down. The basement was small. Stone walls, a dirt floor, old hymnals stacked in corners, dusty shelves with rusted candle holders, and in the far wall, a door, iron, heavy, with a lock that was broken. I walked toward the door. My footsteps echoed in the silence. I reached out and pushed it. It swung open. Beyond the door, a small room, stone walls, a dirt floor, a stone altar, and on the altar, a book. I walked to the book. I opened it. The pages were blank, just like Thomas had described. Then words started to appear. Not in English, in something else. Something I didn't recognize. But I felt what they meant. They were telling me to close the door, to leave the book alone, to forget what I'd seen. I closed the book, I left the room, I locked the broken door behind me, I went back upstairs, I got in my truck and drove away. I never went back to the church. I sold it at a loss. I moved to a different state. I changed my name. I tried to forget. But sometimes when I'm alone, I see the words in my mind. They burn, they tell me to go back, they tell me to open the door, they tell me to let it out.